The envelope was red, which should have been my first warning. Not the cheerful red of birthday cards or the romantic red of Valentine declarations, but the deep crimson of dried blood under my apartment door at 3 a.m. I should have burned it. Instead, exhausted from my third consecutive double shift at the auction house and still drowning in the debt collector's calls about my mother's medical bills, I opened it. Inside, printed on expensive cardstock with raised lettering, was an invitation to an event that officially didn't exist. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered, squinting at the elaborate script in the dim light of my phone. The Obsidian Auction. Midnight Saturday. The old Hartley Manor on the eastern edge of the city, where urban sprawl met forgotten woods. Below the details, a single line. Appraisal services required. Compensation generous. My phone buzzed. Marcus, of course. The text read, "You got yours? We're going." Don't even think about saying no. I called him immediately. "Marcus, this is insane. The Obsidian Auction is a myth, a story people tell to scare. It's real, Jules." His voice carried that manic excitement that always preceded his worst ideas. "I've been trying to get an invite for 2 years. You know what they auction there? Supernatural artifacts, enchanted items, things worth millions. They need appraisers for some paintings, man. Real work, real money. When was the last time you had real money?" I looked around my apartment, at the eviction notice on my counter, at the photo of my mother on the mantel, smiling despite the hospital gown. She'd been gone 3 months, and I was still paying for the privilege of watching her die slowly. How much compensation? I asked, hating myself. Enough to matter. Wear something nice. Saturday arrived too quickly. Marcus picked me up in a borrowed Mercedes, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my rent. "Where did you get that?" I asked, sliding into the passenger seat in my only decent blazer. Don't ask questions you don't want answered. He grinned, pulling into traffic. Just relax. We appraise some paintings, collect our fee, and leave. Easy money. Hartley Manor materialized from the darkness, like something from a Gothic novel. The building was a sprawling stone monstrosity, lit by torches that shouldn't still burn, but did. Cars lined the circular drive, each more expensive than the last. Figures in evening wear climbed the steps, and even from a distance, I could tell they weren't all human. "Marcus," I said slowly, "you didn't mention the supernatural community would be here. Would you have come?" "No, exactly." He parked and killed the engine. "Look, Julian, we stay professional, do the job, and don't draw attention. These people have rules. As long as we follow them, we're fine." The interior was worse. The grand ballroom had been converted into an auction house, but everything felt wrong. The temperature was too cold, the shadows too deep, and the crowd too still. Vampires clustered near the bar, their movements liquid and predatory. I spotted what might have been Phi near the windows, their beauty painful to look at directly. Other creatures I couldn't identify filled the space between. And there, on raised platforms around the room, were the auction items. Weapons that hummed with power. Books bound in materials I didn't want to identify. Jewelry that seemed to drink in the light, and humans. 3 of them, standing on pedestals in simple white clothing, collared and silent. My stomach turned. "Marcus, those are people. Indentured servants," he hissed. "It's legal in supernatural communities. Don't make a scene." A pale man in an immaculate suit approached us. His smile was perfectly pleasant and perfectly terrifying. "Gentlemen, Mr. Reeves and Mr. Chun, I presume? I am Dimitri, master of tonight's proceedings. If you'll follow me, the paintings require your expertise." He led us through the crowd to a side gallery where a dozen paintings hung, illuminated by soft spotlights. Despite my disgust at the situation, my professional instincts kicked in. These were originals, dating from the Renaissance to the contemporary period. I pulled out my loupe and began examining them, making notes. "Authentic Caravaggio," I murmured. "Probably stolen from a private collection in 1943. This one is a forgery, but an excellent one, likely from the 1890s. This contemporary piece is genuine. Artist unknown but valuable." I worked for an hour, losing myself in the familiar task. When I finished, Dmitri reviewed my notes with approval. "Excellent work, Mr. Reeves. Your payment will be delivered by the evening's end. Please enjoy the auction as our guests." Marcus dragged me to the bar, where he ordered something amber and expensive. I asked for water, needing to stay sharp. The auction began with the items I'd appraised, each selling for astronomical sums to buyers I couldn't see clearly. Then came the weapons, the artifacts, each introduction more disturbing than the last dot. Then Dmitri's voice changed, taking on a formal quality. "And now, honored guests, we come to the evening's specialty items. First, a male, age 26, healthy, skilled in household management." I watched in horror as they auctioned one of the humans. The bidding was fierce, cold, matter of fact. He sold for an amount that could have saved my mother's life twice over. "This is barbaric," I whispered. "It's their world," Marcus said quietly. "We're just visiting." The second human was led away by a Phi woman with frost in her hair. Then Dmitri raised his hands for silence. "Our final offering of the evening has been withdrawn by the seller. However, we have a special guest who has requested viewing rights for potential future acquisitions." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. The crowd parted like a sea, and she walked through. Serafina Morgrave was a nightmare dressed in black silk. Tall, pale as death, with hair like ink and eyes that reflected the torchlight like a cat's. She moved with the fluid grace of a predator, and every supernatural creature in the room either bowed or averted their gaze. The humans on pedestals trembled. I'd heard the name whispered at the auction house. Vampire Duchess, older than most nations, collector of rare art and rarer humans. Her estate was rumored to be filled with beautiful things that never left alive. She surveyed the room with bored displeasure, and her gaze swept past me, then stopped, returned. Our eyes met, and I felt the weight of centuries in that stare. She smiled, showing just a hint of fang. Marcus grabbed my arm. "Don't look at her directly." "Julian, look away." But I couldn't. Maybe it was the drinks he'd been putting away all night. Maybe it was the moral outrage building in my chest. Maybe it was the exhaustion of watching everything I'd worked for crumble while people bought and sold human beings for entertainment. "This is disgusting," I said, loud enough to carry in the suddenly silent room. The crowd gasped. Marcus went white. Dmitri looked like he might faint. Seraphine's smile widened. She glided toward us, and the crowd parted further, desperate to avoid her path. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough that I could smell night jasmine and something copper underneath. "What?" she asked in a voice like honey over broken glass. "Did you just say?" My survival instincts finally kicked in, screaming at me to apologize, to grovel, to run. But I'd spent 3 years watching my mother die because we couldn't afford the treatment that would have saved her. I'd spent tonight watching people with more money than morality buy human beings. I said, "This is disgusting." "You're disgusting. All of you, treating people like property while pretending you're civilized." The silence was absolute. Marcus made a small whimpering sound. Serafina studied me like I was a particularly interesting insect. Bold words from a human who came here for money. "Tell me, little appraiser, what makes you different from the items you valued tonight? You sold your expertise to the highest bidder just as surely as they sold themselves." "I had a choice," I shot back. "Did you?" She circled me slowly. "Or did desperation make your choice for you? I can smell it on you, you know." The debt, the grief, the fear. You came here because you had no other options. How is that different from them? Because I'm leaving when this is done. Are you? She stopped in front of me again, tilting her head. Dmitri, what is the price for this one? My lady, he is not for sale. He is an appraiser, a free contractor. Everything has a price. Name it. Dmitri looked at me, calculating. His services for the evening were valued at 5,000. His outburst has caused disruption. Perhaps 20,000 to compensate for. 500,000, Serafina interrupted. I'll pay 500,000 for him. Cash, tonight. The room erupted in murmurs. That was more than any human had ever sold for at the Obsidian auction. Marcus grabbed my arm harder, trying to pull me away. My lady, please, there's been a misunderstanding, Dmitri began. No misunderstanding. Her eyes never left mine. He called me disgusting. I find myself curious about what other opinions he holds. I'm purchasing him to educate him properly on civilized behavior. You can't just buy me. I shouted. I'm a free human. This is kidnapping. You accepted payment to attend an illegal supernatural auction. You're now in my custody for causing a disturbance. By supernatural law, which supersedes your human regulations in this space, you belong to me. She smiled again, colder this time. You wanted to understand the difference between choice and desperation, little appraiser. Now you'll learn it intimately. She nodded to two massive figures I hadn't noticed before. They moved behind me, and I felt something cold snap around my neck. A collar. It burned like ice against my skin. Welcome to my collection, Julian Reeves. Try not to bore me too quickly. The last thing I saw before they dragged me out was Marcus's horrified face, and the thick envelope Dmitri pressed into his hands. My payment for the evening, I realized distantly. He would take it. Of course he would. Then I was in a black car, speeding into the night, with Serafina beside me studying my face like I was a painting she'd just purchased and wasn't quite sure where to hang. You know, she said conversationally, most humans beg at this point. I touched the collar, wincing as it burned hotter. Would it make a difference? No, but it would be more entertaining. She leaned back, closing her eyes. Take him to the estate. Put him in the East Wing. Tomorrow we begin his lessons. Lessons in what? I demanded. She opened one eye, and in it, I saw something ancient and hungry, and completely devoid of mercy. In knowing your place. The car drove on through the darkness, carrying me away from everything I'd known, into a nightmare I'd bought with my own righteous anger. I woke to silk sheets and the smell of lavender, which was disorienting enough before I remembered where I was. The collar around my neck provided an immediate, burning reminder. I sat up too quickly, and the room spun massive, decorated in deep burgundies and golds, with furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed manicured gardens stretching into morning mist. A prison, no matter how beautiful, was still a prison. I stumbled to the door, half expecting it to be locked. It opened smoothly, revealing a corridor lined with paintings I recognized even in my disoriented state. A Vermeer, 2 Rembrandts, a Monet I'd thought lost in World War II, each worth millions, hanging casually like motel art. I wouldn't wander too far if I were you. I spun to find a woman leaning against the wall, watching me with amused dark eyes. She was vampire, I could tell now. After last night, something about the stillness, but younger than Serafina. She wore modern clothes, jeans, and a band t-shirt, her auburn hair pulled into a messy bun. The collar, she continued, pushing off the wall. It's keyed to the estate boundaries. Cross them, and it'll stop your heart. Unpleasant way to go, I'm told. She extended her hand. Octavia. I'm Seraphon's assistant, companion, occasional voice of reason, though she rarely listens. I ignored the hand. Where is she? Attending to business. The Duchess has responsibilities beyond tormenting humans, though she does enjoy it as a hobby. Octavia dropped her hand, unmothered. You're the talk of the estate, you know. She's never paid so much for a human. Usually, she just takes what she wants. The fact that she bought you properly has everyone curious. How fortunate for me to be such an expensive acquisition. Sarcasm. Good. You'll need it. She started walking, and after a moment, I followed. What choice did I have? Come on. I'll show you around your new home. Try to look grateful. Some humans would kill for this opportunity. To be enslaved by a monster? Octavia glanced back, something sharp in her expression. To live in luxury, protected from the chaos outside, with access to knowledge and experiences most humans never dream of. But sure, let's call it enslavement. Very dramatic. The estate was obscene in its opulence. Room after room of collected treasures, not just paintings, but sculptures, first editions, artifacts from civilizations I'd only read about. The library alone could have kept me occupied for years under different circumstances. We passed other servants, all human, all wearing collars similar to mine. They averted their eyes as we walked. How many people does she own? I asked, disgust thick in my voice. Own is such an ugly word. Employ, house, protect. Octavia opened a door to a conservatory filled with exotic plants. 17 humans, currently under her protection. Most came willingly. I find that hard to believe. Believe what you want. She plucked a flower, twirling it between her fingers. You'll meet Leopold soon. He's been here 60 years. Ask him about his choices. We found Leopold in the kitchen, a sprawling space that mixed medieval architecture with modern appliances. He was elderly, perhaps in his 80s, moving with the careful precision of someone who knew exactly where everything belonged. He looked up as we entered, his weathered face breaking into a warm smile. Octavia, darling. And this must be our newest resident. His accent was British, cultured. Julian Reeves, the man who insulted a duchess and lived to see morning. Quite the feat. Leopold doesn't believe in sugarcoating things, Octavia said. At my age, why bother? He wiped his hands on a towel. Sit, boy. You look like death. When did you last eat? I realized I couldn't remember. Leopold immediately began preparing food, and despite everything, my stomach growled. Octavia perched on the counter, watching me with those knowing eyes. So, I said as Leopold placed eggs and toast before me. 60 years here. Are you going to tell me it's wonderful? Leopold sat across from me, his expression thoughtful. I'm going to tell you the truth. The Duchess is cold, exacting, and occasionally cruel. She collects beautiful things and discards them when they bore her. Every human who comes here thinks they'll be different, special enough to warm her frozen heart. That's not encouraging. I'm not finished. He poured tea with steady hands. She's also honorable in her way. She protects what's hers fiercely. She's never broken a promise to me in 6 decades. And yes, she's broken every human who thought they could change her, but they all made the same mistake. Which was, they tried to make her human. They forgot what she is. Leopold met my eyes. You won't survive here if you expect her to be something she's not. She's a predator, Julian. Ancient and powerful and fundamentally different from us. The moment you forget, that is the moment you become another discarded toy. The food turned to ash in my mouth. Why are you telling me this? Because unlike the others, you already hate her. That might save you. He stood, gathering dishes. Lady Seraphina wants you in the blue drawing room at noon. Don't be late. She despises tardiness. Octavia led me back through the maze of corridors. Leopold likes you. That's rare. He's trying to scare me. He's trying to help you. There's a difference. She stopped outside an ornate door. This is your room. There are clothes in the wardrobe, all your size. Shower, change, be presentable by noon. And Julian? Her expression softened slightly. Actually listen to what Leopold said. Serafina has had 17 humans in 60 years. Want to know how many are still here? Leopold. Just Leopold. She walked away, leaving me with that particular horror. I spent the next hour exploring my gilded cage. The wardrobe held expensive clothes that fit perfectly. Someone had researched me thoroughly. The bathroom was marble and gold. A shower had more settings than my old car. Everything designed for comfort, for luxury, for making you forget you were property. The collar burned constantly. A reminder dot at precisely noon. I found the blue drawing room. Serafina stood by the windows, backlit by filtered sunlight, looking like something from a Renaissance painting. She'd changed from last night's black to a deep emerald dress that probably cost more than my life's earnings. Punctual, she said without turning. Perhaps you can be taught after all. What do you want from me? She turned, and in daylight, she was even more beautiful and more terrifying. To understand what I purchased. You're an interesting contradiction, Julian Reeves. You have an eye for beauty. Your appraisals last night were flawless. Yet you called that beauty disgusting. I called the auction disgusting. The slavery. The commerce, she corrected, moving closer. Everything in this world is commerce. Your time, your skills, your body, all have value. I simply made the transaction explicit. That's a sociopath's logic. That's a survivor's logic. She circled me, and I forced myself not to retreat. Do you know how old I am, Julian? Old enough to know better. She laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. I was born when your ancestors were painting themselves blue and worshipping stones. I've watched empires rise and crumble. I've seen humans commit atrocities that would make last night's auction look like charity. She stopped in front of me. You judge me by morals that didn't exist for most of my existence. Why should I adopt them now? Because they're right, right. She tasted the word. Such certainty. Tell me, when your mother was dying, did you never consider desperate measures? Theft, perhaps? Violence? Selling something you valued to save her? The mention of my mother hit like a physical blow. How do you know about? I know everything about you. Your debt, your degree in art history, your mother's cancer, and how you exhausted every option trying to save her. Her voice softened microscopically. You understand desperate bargains better than you admit. That was different, was it? Or is the only difference that you lost your bargain, while I've won mine for centuries? She moved to a desk, pulling out a leather folder. These are your duties. You'll catalog my collection, appraise new acquisitions, and accompany me to various functions where your expertise is required. In return, you'll have luxury, safety, and your debt erased. And if I refuse, the collar stays until you comply or bore me, whichever comes first. She held out the folder. I suggest compliance. My interest in defiant pets is historically short-lived. I took the folder, hating myself. Inside were detailed instructions, schedules, expectations. It was comprehensive and suffocating. We begin tomorrow with the East Gallery, Serafina continued. Tonight, you'll join me for dinner. Leopold will prepare something suitable for human consumption. I'm not hungry. I didn't ask if you were hungry. I told you what you'll do. Her eyes flashed. Let's establish something clearly, Julian. You're here because you ran your mouth when wisdom demanded silence. You're here because you valued your pride over your survival. Those were your choices. Now you'll live with the consequences. She walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. You'll notice paintings throughout the estate featuring a dark-haired man. You will not ask about him. You will not comment on him. You will not acknowledge his existence. Am I clear? Who? The temperature dropped 20 degrees. Am I clear? I swallowed. Yes. Good. We're making progress. She left, and I stood alone in the blue drawing room, surrounded by priceless art and crushing realization. I spent the afternoon wandering the permitted areas of the estate, finding Leopold's warning manifested everywhere. The dark-haired man appeared in dozens of paintings, Renaissance style, Baroque, even some contemporary pieces. Always the same face, human, handsome, painted with obvious love. And in every room where his portrait hung, I noticed the same detail. Fresh flowers, recently placed, carefully maintained. You noticed. Leopold appeared beside me in the portrait gallery, startling me. Everyone does eventually. Who was he? Someone she loved. Someone she lost. He studied the painting before us, a masterwork showing the man reading by candlelight. 400 years ago, before my time. She doesn't speak of him, just maintains the portraits and replaces the flowers every 3 days. Vampires can love? Some can. Some can't. Lady Serafina loved once. Leopold's voice carried weight. It destroyed something in her when he died. The woman who bought you last night. She's what remained after the grief. Dinner was a surreal affair. The dining room could have seated 30, but only 2 places were set, one at the head of the table for Serafina, one to her right for me. Leopold served courses that were individually masterpieces. Serafina barely touched her food, instead watching me eat with disconcerting focus. You're wondering why I'm not eating, she said finally. I'm wondering a lot of things. I feed differently, usually in private. She sipped wine, or what I hoped was wine. Does that disturb you? Should it? Most humans find vampire feeding habits repulsive. Most humans aren't being held prisoner by one. She smiled, and for a moment, something almost human flickered in her expression. You don't flinch from me. Even terrified, you don't flinch. Why? I set down my fork. Because flinching won't change anything. You're going to do what you want regardless. True, but most pretend I won't. They flatter, grovel, try to appeal to mercy I don't have. She leaned forward. You just accept what I am. It's refreshingly honest. Leopold's advice. Ah, he's corrupting you already. She stood. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. We walked through the estate's gardens as evening fell, the grounds lit by subtle pathway lights. Serafina moved silently beside me, and despite everything, I found myself noticing details, the careful landscaping, the sculptures placed at precise intervals, the small fountain featuring a design I recognized from ancient Rome. You have an eye for beauty, I said before I could stop myself. Why surround yourself with it if you're so removed from humanity? Beauty transcends species. It's one of the few constants across centuries. She touched a rose, her pale fingers gentle. Everything else changes. Empires, philosophies, moralities. But beauty remains. Is that why you collect people? For beauty? I collect people for many reasons. Beauty, utility, curiosity. She looked at me. I collected for insolence. But I'm beginning to think there might be other reasons to keep you. Before I could respond, a figure emerged from the shadows of empire, male, with Seraphin's dark hair and cruel mouth. He stopped when he saw us, his expression shifting from surprise to calculation. Serafina, I heard rumors you'd made an acquisition. I didn't believe them, Casimir. Her voice hardened. You're not welcome here. Come now, sister. Is that any way to greet family? He approached, circling me like I was livestock. 500,000 for this? You're getting sentimental in your old age. Leave, now. I've brought someone to see you. Vivian, come. Another vampire appeared, older looking, carrying herself with academic precision. She studied me with clinical interest. Remarkable. The reports were accurate. What reports? I demanded. Vivian produced a small device, scanning me with it. The collar heated, and I gasped. Definitely Crimson Heir bloodline. Primary markers confirmed. Recessive traits suggest third or fourth generation removal from the original line, but still viable for enough. Seraphon's voice cracked like a whip. Casimir, remove her from my estate immediately, or I'll remove her in pieces. Don't you want to know what you've stumbled onto, sister? He's not just a human. He's a Crimson Heir. Do you understand what that means? The air grew heavy with tension. Seraphine's expression revealed nothing, but I felt danger radiating from her. I know exactly what it means. It changes nothing. It changes everything, Casimir pressed. The council will pay millions for access to him. The bloodline was thought extinct. The world exploded into violence. Serafina moved faster than sight, and suddenly Casimir was against a tree, her hand around his throat. He's mine. The council has no claim. Neither do you. The laws. I wrote half those laws. Don't lecture me. She released him, and he stumbled back. Take Vivian and leave. If you return without invitation, I'll make our last war look like a pleasant memory. They left, but Casimir's final look promised this wasn't over. Serafina stood rigid, her composure cracking. Inside, she commanded. Now, we returned to the estate in silence. Once in her private study, she poured herself something dark and drank it in one motion. Did you know? Know what? What's a Crimson Heir? She laughed bitterly. Of course you didn't. Why would you? She poured another drink. Crimson Heirs are humans with specific genetic markers. Rare bloodlines that can form true mate bonds with vampires. 3 centuries ago, there were perhaps 100 families. Vampire-human wars killed most. The remainder went into hiding or the bloodline diluted until the markers disappeared. And I have these markers. Apparently. Which means... She trailed off, looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. It means you're worth far more than I paid. It means the Vampire Council will want you. It means Casimir will cause problems. What's a mate bond? Something you don't need to worry about. She moved to the window. It requires consent from both parties, and I have no interest in such entanglements. You're still just property to me. But something in her voice suggested otherwise. I thought of the portraits, the flowers, the crack in her armor when her brother mentioned the council. What happens now? I asked. She turned, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked almost uncertain. Now I decide if keeping you is worth the war it will likely cause. Her eyes met mine. Tell me, Julian Reeves, if I offered to free you right now, remove the collar, and let you walk away, would you take it? It should have been an easy answer. Freedom versus captivity. But I thought of Leopold's warning, of the portraits throughout the estate, of the vulnerability I'd just witnessed, of the fact that she'd protected me from her own brother without hesitation. I don't know, I admitted. She smiled, sad and ancient. Good. Neither do I. At least we're equally confused. That night, back in my room, I couldn't sleep. The collar had stopped burning constantly, adapting to my presence. Through the windows, I watched the grounds, and saw Serafina walking alone through the gardens, stopping at the fountain, standing there for hours in the darkness. Whatever she was, whatever I'd become to her, it was more complicated than master and slave. Leopold had warned me not to try changing her, but no one had warned her not to let me. See past the monster she presented, and seeing that glimpse of something else beneath the cruelty that might be the most dangerous thing of all.